The turbulence started suddenly. 1 second the plane was gliding smoothly and the next it was shaking so hard my teeth clattered. People screamed. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. I grabbed my husband's hand but he barely reacted. He was staring straight ahead, frozen. "Hold on," I whispered, gripping the armrest. The overhead compartments burst open, luggage flying down the aisle. A baby wailed. A voice over the speaker said something about an emergency landing, but the words blurred together under the chaos. Then the drop. A weightless, stomach-turning plunge. Someone hit the ceiling. The lights flickered. I heard metal groan tearing apart. I turned to my husband again. "We're gonna be okay," I told him, needing to believe it. His fingers twitched in mine but his eyes weren't on me. He was looking past me to the row behind us. I followed his gaze and saw her. His first love. She looked terrified, clutching the seat in front of her. A deafening explosion. The plane ripped apart. Air rushed in, yanking me from my seat. I reached out, fingers grasping at nothing. The last thing I saw was my husband still staring at her, before everything went black. I woke up to the sound of waves. My body felt like it had been slammed into concrete, every muscle screaming in protest as I tried to move. The air smelled of salt and burnt metal. Something warm trickled down my forehead. Blood. I forced my eyes open. Wreckage. Pieces of the plane were scattered across the shoreline, some half submerged in the water. Smoke curled into the sky from a chunk of what used to be the cabin. Bodies lay motionless on the sand, some still strapped to their seats. I tried to sit up but pain shot through my side, knocking the breath out of me. My ribs, maybe broken. My right leg was twisted at an odd angle. I gritted my teeth and looked around. Where was he? I called out his name, my voice hoarse and weak. Nothing. A few feet away someone groaned. I turned my head and saw a man, his face covered in dirt and blood, trying to push himself up. A survivor. At least I wasn't alone. A wave crashed against me, soaking my torn clothes. I needed to move. If the tide rose, I'd be dragged out to sea. Using my arms, I pulled myself forward, gasping at the sharp pain in my ribs. Every inch felt like agony, but I kept going. The sand was hot, rough against my palms. Then I heard voices. Not far from the treeline, a small group had gathered. Survivors. Relief flooded through me. I opened my mouth to call out, but then I saw him. My husband. He was sitting on the ground, leaning against a broken piece of the fuselage. And he wasn't alone. He was with him. His first love. Her arms were wrapped around herself, shaking, and he had his hands on her shoulders, speaking to her softly. My stomach twisted. I struggled to my knees, wincing as another sharp pain shot through my side. I wanted to call out to him to let him know I was here, that I was alive, but something held me back. He looked focused, like nothing else in the world existed except for her. I clenched my fingers into the sand. Maybe he didn't see me. Maybe he was just in shock. Maybe. He reached for her hand. Held it. The wind howled around me, but I barely felt it. My breath came short and uneven. My ribs hurt, my leg throbbed, my head was spinning, but none of that compared to the ache in my chest. I needed to get away from them. I pressed my palms into the sand and forced myself up. My vision blurred, spots dancing in front of my eyes, but I kept going. If he didn't see me, if he didn't care, then I wouldn't beg. I turned away from the group and started walking toward the trees. Alone. Every step felt like fire. My leg dragged behind me, and every time I inhaled, sharp pain shot through my ribs. The only thing keeping me moving was the bitter taste in my mouth. I kept telling myself I was just in shock, that maybe I had misread the situation, but the image was burned into my brain. His hands on her, the way he held her, the way he didn't even glance around to see if I was there. I reached the edge of the trees and collapsed against a fallen log, pressing my forehead against the rough bark. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. But all I could hear was the sound of waves crashing and my own ragged gasps. I looked down at my leg. Blood had soaked through my jeans, dark and sticky. I swallowed hard and peeled back the fabric. The gash was deep but not fatal. My ribs were another story. Every breath was sharp, like knives pressing into my lungs. I had to stop the bleeding. I ripped a strip of cloth from the bottom of my shirt and wrapped it tightly around my leg, biting down hard to keep from screaming. My head spun. I clenched my fists into the dirt, waiting for the pain to settle. A voice carried through the air. His voice. I stiffened. Slowly I turned my head back toward the wreckage. He was still there, crouched next to her, speaking in a low voice. She nodded, eyes glassy with tears, her fingers gripping his sleeve. I swallowed against the lump in my throat. Look at me. Just once. Look at me. Nothing. I pressed my hand against my ribs and forced myself up. I was wasting time. I needed water, shelter, things that would actually keep me alive. He could do whatever he wanted. I wasn't going to sit around waiting to be noticed. I took a shaky step forward, then another. The trees were dense, but I could see an opening ahead, a place where the jungle thinned out into a small clearing. If I could just make it there. A rustling sound came from behind me. Footsteps. My heart jumped. I turned around fast, too fast. Pain exploded in my side, stealing my breath. It wasn't him. It was someone else. A man. He looked like he had been through hell. His clothes were torn, his face covered in sweat and dirt. He stared at me for a long moment, then his gaze dropped to my leg. You need help, he said. His voice was rough, exhausted. I didn't answer right away. I glanced back toward the beach one last time. They were still there. Still holding on to each other. I exhaled slowly and turned back to the man in front of me. I can manage, I said, even though we both knew it was a lie. He didn't argue. He just nodded and stepped closer, holding out his arm. I hesitated, then took it. His grip was strong, steady. As we moved deeper into the trees, I didn't look back again. Walking was torture. Every step sent fresh waves of pain through my ribs, but I clenched my jaw and kept moving. The man beside me, tall, rough-looking, with sharp eyes that scanned the surroundings like he'd done this before, didn't ask me if I was okay. Maybe he knew I'd lie. The deeper we went into the jungle, the thicker the air became, heavy with damp heat. I could still hear the ocean behind us, but the wreckage was out of sight now. My fingers curled against my palm. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. I'm Aaron, the man finally said. I barely glanced at him. Okay. He huffed a small laugh, more breath than sound, and didn't push. We walked for what felt like forever before he finally stopped near a clearing. The ground was uneven, the trees twisted together in a way that made it feel like we were walking into a cage. But there was a small stream trickling through the middle of it, and right now that mattered more than anything. Aaron knelt beside the water and cupped some into his hands, drinking deeply before looking up at me. Go ahead. I hesitated. I knew I needed it, but my body still felt locked in survival mode. I turned, scanning the jungle behind us. I don't think they're coming, Aaron said. My throat tightened. I wasn't sure which part stung more, the fact that he was right or the fact that I had still been hoping. I crouched down slowly, wincing as my ribs protested, and scooped water into my mouth. It was warm but clean. I drank until the dryness in my throat faded. Then I sat back and let my hands rest on my lap, watching Aaron as he pulled a small knife from his pocket. He turned it over in his hands like it was something precious. You were on the plane, I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, flipping the knife closed. Yeah. Got thrown clear before impact. Came to in the jungle. His eyes met mine. You. Woke up on the beach. He hummed like that made sense, then nodded toward my leg. That needs more than a rag. I'll deal with it. His gaze lingered on me for a second before he exhaled and pushed himself up. I'll find something to help. I didn't stop him. I knew I should have been more careful, more wary, but my body was screaming for rest. I leaned against a tree, letting my eyelids fall shut for just a moment. And then I heard it. Voices. I snapped upright, heart hammering. They were close, coming from the other side of the clearing. I struggled to my feet, gripping the tree to keep myself steady. Aaron returned before I could react, carrying a handful of broad leaves and vines. He must have seen my face because he stopped. What is it? I swallowed hard. I hear them. His expression darkened. Your husband. The word made my stomach twist. I didn't answer. I just turned toward the sound, pulse pounding in my ears. And then I saw them. A small group was pushing through the trees. Survivors. I recognized a few faces, but my eyes locked on one. Him. He looked different. His clothes torn, his hair messy, dried blood on his temple. But it was him. And she was right beside him, gripping his arm. Aaron stepped closer, voice low. You want to go to him? I should have. I should have run to him, told him I was okay, let him pull me into his arms. That's what you do when you survive something like this together. That's what love is supposed to look like. But then I saw his hand. still holding hers. My breath caught in my throat. The others around them looked exhausted, scared, desperate for some kind of safety, but not him. Not her. They were standing too close, whispering to each other, lost in their own world. Aaron shifted beside me. "You sure he's looking for you?" The words felt like a slap. I took a shaky breath and stepped back into the shadows of the trees. "Let's go." Aaron didn't question it. He just nodded and followed as I turned away, leaving my husband behind. The jungle swallowed us as we moved further from the wreckage. Every step was a battle. My ribs ached, my leg throbbed, and my head felt like it was floating somewhere above my body. But I refused to stop. If I stopped, I'd start thinking. If I started thinking, I'd turn around. And I couldn't do that. Aaron walked ahead of me, pushing branches out of the way, barely making a sound. He moved like someone who was used to this, like this wasn't the worst thing that had ever happened to him. I envied that. I tripped over a root, catching myself against a tree. My breath came out in short, painful gasps. He stopped, looking back. "We should rest." "No." He raised an eyebrow. "You're bleeding through your bandage." I looked down. He was right. The fabric around my leg was soaked through, the red dark against my skin. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to focus. "I just need." The ground spun. Aaron stepped forward, grabbing my arm before I could fall. "All right. That's enough." I wanted to argue, but I didn't have the energy. He guided me toward a fallen tree and eased me down. I pressed my back against the rough bark, closing my eyes. "I'll fix your leg," he said. I didn't answer. A minute later, I felt him near me again, his hands carefully untying the soaked bandage. I winced as the cloth peeled away from my wound. "You're lucky," he muttered. "No deep infection. But it won't stay that way if we don't clean it. Do what you have to." The next few minutes were pure pain. He pressed some kind of crushed leaves against my skin, the sting sharp enough to make my vision go white at the edges. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. "Almost done," he murmured. I focused on my breathing. But the pain wasn't just from my leg. It was everything. My body, my mind, my heart. When he finished, he sat back on his heels and studied me. "You should eat." I swallowed. "You have food." He shook his head, glancing toward the trees. "Not yet. But there's plenty around here. If you know what to look for." I forced my eyes open. "And you do." Aaron gave a small shrug. "I've been through worse." I didn't ask what that meant. He stood, brushing dirt off his hands. "Stay here. I'll be back." Panic flared in my chest. I didn't want to be alone. Not like this. Not after everything. But I refused to say that out loud, so I just nodded. As soon as he disappeared into the trees, the silence pressed in. The jungle was loud, birds screeching, leaves rustling, insects buzzing, but I still felt alone. And then my mind betrayed me. Maybe I should have gone to him. I clenched my jaw. No. He should have come to me. He should have looked for me first. I had nearly died, and he was too busy holding someone else's hand to notice. I pressed my palms against my eyes. Stop thinking about it. A rustling sound made me tense. I snapped my head up, heart pounding. Aaron stepped back into the clearing, holding a handful of fruit. He tossed one to me. "Eat." I caught it clumsily, my hands still shaking. The fruit was small, round, and slightly bruised, but I didn't care. I took a bite. The juice ran down my chin, sweet and slightly bitter, but it was food. It was survival. Aaron sat across from me, watching carefully. "We'll be okay." I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure that was true. Night fell faster in the jungle than I expected. One minute, the sky was streaked with orange and pink, and the next, darkness swallowed everything. The noises changed too. The distant crash of waves was still there, but the jungle itself came alive. Chirps, rustling, strange calls in the distance. It made my skin crawl. Aaron had built a fire. Nothing big, just enough to keep the shadows from pressing in too close. He sat on the other side of it, sharpening a stick with his knife, his face flickering in the firelight. I hugged my arms around myself, trying to focus on the warmth, on the small comfort of having someone else nearby. But my mind wouldn't let me rest. Kept pulling me back. Back to the beach. Back to him. I had spent years with that man. Built a life with him. I knew him better than anyone. Or at least I thought I did. But today I had seen something I wasn't sure I could forgive. Aaron glanced up. You should try to sleep. I shook my head. I won't. He didn't push, just went back to his knife. The scraping sound was steady, almost soothing. I stared into the flames. I heard him talking to her. Aaron didn't react. He just let me talk. I didn't mean to. I wasn't even close. But I heard him. My throat felt tight. He said, I thought I lost you once. I won't let it happen again. I forced out a small laugh, but it sounded hollow. Not me. Not the woman he married. He was talking to her. Aaron finally stopped sharpening the stick. He turned it over in his hands before setting it aside. You still love him? The question knocked the breath out of me. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I didn't care. That it didn't matter. But I couldn't. I looked down at my hands. I don't know. Aaron leaned back against the tree behind him. Love's a strange thing. I swallowed hard. It shouldn't be this strange. He let out a quiet breath. No. It shouldn't. Silence settled between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. He didn't offer empty words or useless comfort. He just sat there, existing in the same space as my pain, and somehow that was enough. I closed my eyes for a second, listening to the fire crackle. The ache in my ribs had dulled to something manageable, but the ache in my chest felt worse. I don't know what to do, I admitted. Aaron didn't answer right away. Then he said, You do. You just don't want to. I opened my eyes. He was watching me, his expression unreadable but steady. Something in me cracked. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did know. Maybe I had known the moment I saw them together. The moment he didn't come looking for me. I let out a slow breath. Then what now? Aaron picked up his knife again, flipping it open with a practiced movement. Now we survive. And for the first time since the crash, I realized I wasn't waiting for my husband to save me. I was going to save myself. Morning came slow. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the jungle was thick with early mist. My body ached from sleeping on the hard ground, my ribs stiff and sore, but I ignored it. Pain was just another thing to push past. Aaron was already awake, crouched by the stream, splashing water on his face. His movements were precise, controlled. Like someone used to surviving. I wasn't. Or at least I hadn't been. I sat up carefully, stretching my leg out to check the wound. The makeshift bandage was holding, but the bruising around it had spread. It looked bad. It felt worse. Aaron glanced over. We need to clean that again. I nodded, but I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was elsewhere. My chest felt different. Like something inside me had been carved out overnight, leaving only an empty space behind. I had spent so much time feeling everything. The betrayal. The pain of realizing that the person I trusted most had chosen someone else in the moment I needed him the most. But now I just felt numb. Aaron sat beside me, peeling a piece of fruit with his knife. You're quiet. I don't have anything to say. He didn't look up. That's not true. I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over my face. I feel like I should be more upset. Like I should be crying or screaming or doing something. But all I feel is, I struggled for the word. Nothing. Aaron handed me a piece of the fruit. I took it without thinking. Good, he said simply. I frowned. Good. He met my eyes. Yeah. That means you're done waiting. I let the words settle. Done waiting. It felt right. For days I had been waiting. Waiting for him to come looking for me. Waiting for an explanation. Waiting for something to make this hurt less. But he wasn't coming. And even if he did, it wouldn't change what I had seen. What I had heard. So maybe Aaron was right. Maybe it was good that I felt nothing. Because that meant I was ready to move forward. I bit into the fruit, the tartness making my jaw tighten. What's next? Aaron wiped his knife clean on his pant leg. We find a way out. The words settled deep inside me. Before, escape had been a vague idea. Something in the background of my thoughts, overshadowed by everything else. But now it was the only thing that mattered. I nodded, gripping the fruit tighter. Yeah. We do. Aaron studied me for a moment, then gave a small, approving nod. He stood and stretched. I'll check the area. See if I can find anything useful. I'll come with you. He hesitated. Your leg. I'll manage. He didn't argue. We moved through the jungle with slow, careful steps, searching for anything that could help. Every branch we pushed aside, every footprint we left behind, felt like a step away from the past. And the more distance I put between myself and the wreckage, between myself and him, the lighter I felt. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't waiting. I was leaving. The jungle was endless. Every direction looked the same. Thick trees, twisting roots, branches that clawed at my skin like they wanted to hold me here forever. The only thing keeping me moving was the thought of getting out. I wasn't going to die here. And I wasn't going to waste another second thinking about him. Aaron led the way, moving like someone who had done this before. He had a knife, a steady pace, and an expression that didn't change no matter how bad things got. I wondered what kind of life made a person like that. We walked for hours. My leg ached, but I didn't complain. Every few minutes, Aaron would stop, crouch down, and inspect the ground like he was reading something I couldn't see. Then he'd nod and keep moving. At some point, I couldn't take the silence anymore. "What are you looking for?" "Signs of water," he said without turning around. "A river. A stream big enough to follow." "Why?" "Because rivers lead somewhere." I thought about that. It made sense. I just hadn't thought that far ahead. I had been too focused on leaving, on running, on moving in any direction that wasn't backward. Aaron pushed aside a branch, then stopped. His shoulders tensed. I stepped closer, ignoring the flare of pain in my ribs. "What is it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched down, brushing his fingers over the dirt. Footprints. Faint but there. People had been here. Recently. My stomach twisted. Survivors. Maybe. His voice was careful. Or maybe not. I didn't like how that sounded. "You think someone else is here?" He stood, dusting off his hands. "I think we're not alone." A chill ran down my spine. The thought had been lingering in the back of my mind since the crash. This island, this place, it felt too untouched. Too quiet. Like it was waiting for something. Aaron turned toward me. "We need to move faster." I didn't argue. We kept walking, pushing past vines, stepping over fallen trees until finally I heard it. The distant rush of water. Aaron glanced at me. "Hear that?" I nodded. The river. We picked up the pace and after a few minutes we found it. Wide and fast-moving, cutting through the jungle like a scar. Relief flooded through me. Aaron knelt by the edge, dipping his hand in. Fresh. He looked up at me. "We follow this, we might find a way out." Sounded too easy. Too hopeful. "How do you know?" His mouth twitched, almost like a smile. "Because rivers lead somewhere." I stared at the water, my reflection rippling on the surface. It was the first time since the crash that I felt something close to hope. And then I heard voices. Faint but coming closer. I froze. Aaron's hand went to his knife. We stayed still, listening. The voices were too far to make out the words, but I recognized one of them instantly. Him. My stomach twisted. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to see him. Not yet. Not after everything. Aaron glanced at me. "You want to face them?" The answer came out before I could think. "No." He nodded. "Then we move." We followed the river, slipping into the trees just as the voices got closer. I didn't look back. Because I wasn't running away. I was choosing something else. Something better. The river stretched endlessly ahead of us, winding through the jungle like a silver thread. I focused on it, on the steady rush of water, on the sound of my own footsteps, anything to keep my mind from slipping back. But no matter how much distance I put between us, his voice was still in my head. I had thought I was done feeling anything. That I had reached the point where none of it could touch me anymore. But hearing him, knowing he was close, it made my stomach twist in ways I didn't want to admit. Aaron kept moving without looking back. He must have known I was struggling, but he didn't say anything. He just let me figure it out on my own. We walked for hours. The jungle was hot and heavy, every breath thick with damp air. My leg burned, my ribs ached, but I didn't complain. I wasn't stopping now. And then we found it. A piece of wreckage. It was wedged between the trees, metal bent and twisted, part of the fuselage that had somehow landed miles away from the beach. Supplies were scattered around it, suitcases ripped open, clothes tangled in the undergrowth. Aaron crouched beside a half-broken crate. He pried it open with his knife and pulled out a plastic-wrapped package. Rations. He turned it over in his hands. "Not much, but it'll help." I nodded, my fingers tightening around a branch for balance. My head was spinning. Maybe it was the heat or the exhaustion, or maybe it was just the weight of everything finally crashing down. I sank onto a fallen log, rubbing a hand over my face. How long do you think we'll be out here? Aaron sat across from me, breaking the ration pack open. Depends. On what? He handed me a piece of dry, compressed food. On whether you're ready to be found. I stared at it, the words hitting me harder than I expected. Before I could respond, a voice cut through the jungle. Hello. My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. I turned slowly, my pulse hammering. The trees shifted, branches parting, and then he was there. My husband. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that he was still holding her hand. The first thing I felt was nothing. No rush of relief, no longing, no instinct to run to him. Just an odd, empty silence in my chest. He saw me. His eyes widened. You're alive. I didn't respond. He stepped forward, dragging her with him. I looked for you. I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. No, you didn't. His mouth opened, then closed. Guilt flickered across his face. He knew. He knew I had seen him, knew I had heard him, and now he didn't have the right words to make it disappear. He was the one who spoke next. We thought you were gone. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Aaron moved beside me. He didn't say anything, didn't touch me, didn't interfere. But he was there. Thought. I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the pain in my body. You thought I was gone? My voice came out quiet, steady. Or you hoped I was? His face twisted. That's not fair. I let out a slow breath. No. What's not fair is nearly dying and realizing my husband wasn't looking for me. Silence stretched between us. The jungle was loud around us, insects buzzing, birds calling, the river rushing, but all I could hear was the unspoken truth hanging in the air. I wasn't his first choice. I never had been. He reached for me, his fingers barely brushing my arm. We can go back together. My skin burned where he touched me. Not from warmth, but from how foreign it felt. How wrong. I took a step back. No. His eyes darkened. Don't be like this. Aaron's voice cut through the space between us. She said no. My husband turned sharply, like he had just noticed him for the first time. Who the hell are you? Aaron didn't react. He just stood there, arms loose at his sides, completely calm. I glanced at my husband one last time. It doesn't matter. And for the first time since the crash, I turned my back on him. For good. Walking away should have felt final. Should have felt like freedom. But as I moved through the jungle, my legs heavy with exhaustion, my ribs aching with every breath, I realized something. I didn't feel anything at all. Aaron walked beside me, silent as ever. He didn't ask if I was okay. Maybe because he already knew the answer. Maybe because he understood that I wasn't ready to talk about it. We didn't stop until we reached the river again. The sound of rushing water filled the space between us, drowning out the thoughts circling in my head. I crouched by the edge, scooping handfuls of water into my mouth. The cold hit my throat hard, snapping me back into the present. Aaron sat down a few feet away, stretching his legs out in front of him. You all right? I swallowed. No. He nodded like he expected that. Good. Means you're not lying to yourself. I let out a slow breath, staring at the water. I thought it would hurt more. What? Leaving him. I clenched my hands together. I spent years loving that man. I thought losing him would feel like losing a part of myself. I shook my head. But I don't feel like I lost anything. Aaron was quiet for a moment. Then he said, that's because you didn't. I looked at him. He met my gaze, his expression unreadable. He lost you. I held on to those words. Let them settle deep inside me. My husband had been my world for so long. I had built a life around him, trusted him, thought he would always be there. But when everything shattered, when survival stripped us down to the most honest versions of ourselves, he hadn't reached for me. He had chosen her. And I had spent too much time believing that said something about me, when really, it said everything about him. I exhaled. I don't know what to do next. Aaron leaned back on his elbows, glancing up at the trees. You figure it out one step at a time. I scoffed. That easy, huh? Nothing about this is easy. His voice was calm. But you're still here. Still here. That should have been obvious. But for the first time since the crash, I really let myself feel it. I was still alive. My body was bruised and battered, my heart was cracked but not broken. I had survived. I let the silence stretch. The weight in my chest was still there, but it felt lighter now. Not gone, but not unbearable either. Eventually, Aaron stood, brushing dirt off his hands. We should keep moving. I nodded, pushing myself up. My legs were stiff, my ribs sore, but I was ready. I glanced at him. You think we'll make it out of here? Aaron gave me a small smirk. No doubt. And for the first time I believed it. I wasn't walking away from something anymore. I was walking toward something else. Something better. It took days to find a clearing. Days of walking, of listening to the river, of pushing through the thick jungle while my body screamed for rest. Days of silence, of quiet conversations with Aaron, of learning how to move without second-guessing every step. But the hardest part wasn't surviving. It was knowing that at any moment I could have turned back. I could have gone to my husband, let him explain, let him hold me and tell me it had all been a mistake. That fear had clouded his judgment, that he hadn't meant to make me feel like I didn't exist. That the wreckage of our marriage could still be rebuilt. But I didn't. And now, standing at the edge of the jungle, staring at the open land beyond it, I knew I never would. Aaron stood beside me, hands on his hips, surveying the land. You see that? I followed his gaze. In the distance, smoke curled into the sky. Not thick, not a wildfire. Controlled, intentional. A sign of people. A sign of rescue. Relief should have flooded through me, but instead something else settled in my chest. Something quieter. Aaron glanced at me. You ready? I swallowed hard. Was I? For the first time since the crash, I let myself think about what came next. What happened after the jungle, after survival, after escape. I would go back to the real world. Back to a home that didn't feel like home anymore. Back to the memories of a love that no longer existed. Back to the reality that my husband wasn't the person I thought he was. But that wasn't my life anymore. I had walked away from it. And I wasn't turning back. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the jungle behind me, the endless possibilities ahead. I met Aaron's gaze. Yeah. We started walking. The air felt lighter. Every step felt like shedding something old, something heavy. And then just as we reached the open field, I heard my name. I froze. Aaron stopped too, his eyes darkening as he turned his head toward the sound. I didn't have to turn around. I knew who it was. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Wait. I clenched my hands at my sides. I had imagined this moment 100 different ways. I had thought about the things I would say to him, the way I would demand answers, the way I would let my anger pour out in waves. But standing here hearing him call for me, I felt none of that. I felt nothing. Fully I turned. He was running toward me, breathless, his clothes torn, his eyes wild. When he reached me, he grabbed my arm, gripping it too tightly like he was afraid I would disappear. You're alive, he breathed. His face twisted with something close to relief. You're really alive. I stared at him. Did you think I wasn't? His grip tightened. He hesitated, his gaze darting over my shoulder to Aaron. Who the hell is this? Aaron didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. My husband turned back to me, his voice urgent. Listen, I know what you saw. I know what you think. But it wasn't. Don't, I said quietly. He blinked. What? I exhaled, shaking my head. Don't try to explain. Don't try to justify it. I met his eyes, steady and unshaken. It doesn't matter anymore. His face twisted. Of course it matters. We're married. We've been through everything together. We can fix this. I tilted my head slightly. When the plane went down, did you even look for me? Silence. His jaw clenched. It was chaos. I didn't know where you were. But you knew where she was, I cut in. My voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even sad. It was just calm. And that's all that mattered to you. His breath caught. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. That's the difference between us. I stepped back, slipping my arm from his grasp. When I woke up, the first thing I did was look for you. Understanding flickered across his face. Then panic. Wait. He reached for me again. Please. Just wait. I already did. I turned my back to him. And this time I didn't hesitate. Aaron and I walked forward toward the smoke, toward whatever came next. I didn't look back. Not even once. The walk to the smoke felt longer than it should have. Every step forward was a step away from the past, but I could still feel it clinging to me, a shadow stretching behind my heels. I kept waiting for something to pull me back. Another voice, another excuse, another reason to hesitate. Nothing came. The field stretched wide under the open sky, a stark contrast to the suffocating jungle we had left behind. The sun was high, beating down on my skin, the warmth a reminder that I was still here. Still breathing. Still moving. Aaron stayed beside me, silent as always. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if I was ready. Maybe because he already knew that I was both and also neither. As we got closer, I saw them. People. Real people. Not survivors crawling through wreckage. Not ghosts from a life I was leaving behind. These were strangers standing near makeshift tents, tending to small fires, organizing supplies. Some of them looked up as we approached, their expressions shifting from suspicion to relief. A woman hurried toward us. "Are you from the crash?" I nodded. My voice came out rough. "Yeah." More people gathered. I caught bits and pieces of their murmurs. Survivors. More people missing. A rescue team on the way. Someone handed me a bottle of water. I took it, twisting the cap open with stiff fingers. The cold slid down my throat, washing away the taste of ash and blood and jungle. Aaron took a seat on a crate nearby, stretching his legs out like he had all the time in the world. He was watching me, but he didn't say anything. The woman who had approached me crouched down beside me. "Are you injured?" I looked down at myself, at the dried blood on my clothes, at the bruises darkening my skin. "I'll live." She smiled gently. "You're safe now." The words didn't hit me the way I expected. Safe. I didn't know what that meant anymore. Because safety had once been my husband's arms, our home, the life we had built together. But that life had burned in the wreckage. And when I had been gasping for breath, crawling through the sand, bleeding and broken, the person who was supposed to be my safety had been holding someone else. So no, I wasn't safe. Not yet. But I would be. I glanced at Aaron. He was rolling his shoulder like it had been bothering him for a while, but he didn't complain. He just sat there waiting. For what, I wasn't sure. I took another slow sip of water. "What happens now?" The woman hesitated. "There's a team coming in the morning. Helicopters, boats. They'll take you back." But I felt the word settle deep in my chest, unfamiliar and strange. Back to what? There was nothing waiting for me. No husband, no home that still felt like mine. I had spent years thinking my life was solid, unshakable. Then the plane crashed and I realized how easily everything could slip through my fingers. I looked at Aaron. "What about you?" He raised an eyebrow. "What about me? What happens when we get back?" He gave a small, almost amused shrug. "Dunno. I didn't plan that far ahead." I watched him, searching for something I couldn't name. "You're not in a rush to leave, are you?" He tilted his head, considering. "I left a long time ago." I knew that feeling. The woman stood, patting my shoulder gently. "Get some rest. You've been through enough." She walked away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the horizon. The sun was setting, streaks of gold and violet melting into the sky. Aaron shifted beside me. "You thinking about going back to him?" I didn't hesitate. "No." He nodded like that made sense. "Good." I exhaled slowly. "I don't know where I'm supposed to go from here." Aaron leaned back, smirking slightly. "Then don't go back." I turned to him. "What, just start over?" "Why not?" His eyes held something unreadable. "Seems like you're already doing it." I let the words settle. Maybe I wasn't going back. Maybe I didn't have to. I had survived a plane crash. I had survived betrayal. I had survived being left behind. And now I had a choice. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide my future. It was mine. I looked at Aaron. "You ever think about starting over?" He smirked. "Depends." "On what?" "On whether you'll be there." Something in my chest shifted, something light, something I wasn't ready to name yet. I smiled. "Then maybe I won't go back." Aaron didn't say anything. He just held my gaze, something unspoken passing between us, something that felt a lot like a beginning. And as the sun dipped below the horizon for the first time since the crash, I let myself believe that I had survived for a reason. That maybe, just maybe, I wasn't lost anymore. I was finally free.